So, thank you everybody for coming here and showing interest in this, I think, under-researched topic of Tibetophone rap in and out of Tibet. I was recently fortunate enough to present also quite similar topic, albeit much more brief, at the International Conference of Young Tibetologists. But now I'm fortunate enough to have much more time, so we can dive into hopefully more details, right? So without further ado, let me start sort of generally. What is rap, how rap is perceived, and how it is relevant for my research. So rap in general, it's sort of a pseudo-textual form of oral poetry, but mostly when it comes to its meaning, and I mean impact on the society, it's a platform for youth agency to showcase their skills, linguistic and otherwise, and become a true cultural innovators in this sense. When we read about rap sort of theoretically, it always says that it's sort of a fusion of various linguistic and cultural elements, because it's one of those things which was born very locally, then went global and became local again, right? And therefore, it's a very fruitful place to focus our attention when we especially want to talk about things like diaspora or identity. Many people, including a lot of colleagues, they might get the impression that it has a facade of some lyrical simplicity, that it's a basic platform where the artist can show just their egoism and nothing of added value, really. But that's a sort of very first look only, right? When we there are, of course, some common themes which are widespread across the genre. We see a lot of social criticism, often connected with a political outcry, but also a very subjective layer, including emotions, and which interest me the most, the connection with the place of one's dwelling, right? That's where my main focus goes. And when I will be talking about a place, I mean not only like the physical location, but also its social fabric. So in the end, we can say that rap is sort of, I would say, unique medium, which moves quite freely on a oral scribal interface, while still maintaining its musical roots. And it's often important to realize that all rap lyrics, they start their way as a sound in the rapper's mind, and only afterwards they are written into these tiny notebooks, usually, or nowadays smartphones, for basically a moment. And afterwards, they are sung or listened to forever after. So my research actually recaptures them in this, I'd say, state of bardo, which gives us then the opportunity to pause and really, hopefully, dive into their form and function and the meaning it brings to the community. When we look on a rap in the Tibetan context, we see different terms being used for as an equivalent for rap in Tibetan, but the most common one is shematam, right? It's literally speaking, it's a song narration, or one might say also not music, not narration. But basically, it comes down to the thing that it's something not harmonious. You can sort of relate it to the Ramaluke, right? It's the song is the same structure of the word, and it implies how for the first time when the Tibetans came into touch with rap, how they felt about it, and how it was for them. And I picked this citation from a book, which I wanted to put there here specifically, that rap is full of or featured by simplicity of style and language, a certain colloquialism, metric flexibility, spontaneous pittiness, and contemporary content, which I find super fitting. But it actually does not describe rap at all. It's a citation taken from Lama Jap's 2015 book, and it describes gur. So basically, I just wanted to say that maybe rap can be perceived as something drastically new and modern in the Tibetan context, but essentially the same thing existed already in some way, shape, form, or another in the Tibetan culture for a long time. So after this brief introduction, here is the outline of my today's talk. We will first talk about sort of the context. So I would like to position the rap among the other Tibetan pop music, and then we will focus on my on main question about authenticity, sort of skim the layer of commercialization. And then finally, of course, we will see some case studies. I will show you some lyrics and hopefully even the concluding remarks. So let's go on. The modern Tibetan music, right? When we are talking about it in general, we can say that the emergence of it became, it started to be formed in like 70s, 80s, basically after the Cultural Revolution in Tibet, and in exile in India, we talk this emergence once the first waves of new arrivals, Salchorpa, started to flood India. And quite naturally, it was heavily influenced by various foreign music cultures. And because of that, it's sort of this empty umbrella term for very heterogeneous music corpus. And as it sort of happens, it's often put into contrast with something called traditional music. I don't want to delve into much details about what's traditional music and modern music, but if you go on YouTube and type Tibetan modern pop music and then Tibetan traditional music, you will get a very good sense about how people actually feel or use these terms for various genres. And the main features of the Tibetan pop music were, especially in the beginning, a sort of, I wouldn't say propagandistic, but it always had some celebratory purpose, some occasion where it was supposed to be sung or played or performed. And it was sort of a customary approach, while when they were trying to bring positivity to the struggling people, so to speak, right? To make everybody happy, I would say. And there wasn't really that much of a subjective layer in the lyrics something which we are very accustomed to in Western popular music, when the artists really speaks from their heart about their own state of mind or perception or views and stuff like this. And especially in China, it was supposed to infuse the so-called backward culture with various modern elements. But at the end, when we take a step back and look at the corpus of the especially early Tibetan pop music, it ended up having quite predictable canon of themes. It was all about the landscape, the landmarks, the holy landscape, the glorious history, various religious figures, of course, Dalai Lama being the most featured one. And so it was a platform for showcasing the national cultural or religious pride, right? The main question for me, because I work with the lyrics, then is the quality of the lyrics. So there seems to be a big difference between, at least as perceived by the listeners themselves, by the audience, between the work produced in exile and in Tibet, or the work written by either monks or professional sort of poets and amateurs and musicians themselves. Last but not least, there was and still is quite substantial sort of governmental support. We know about TIPA, right? And the things they are doing or outputting, mostly supporting. And it ended up also bringing more academic attention, but not to the Tibetan modern popular music, but mostly towards the traditional or folk or religious music, which then created this, I would say, blank spot filled with some researchers, which I'm extremely grateful for. I think some of them are here today with us, who precisely mapped these so far unknown waters of the Tibetan popular music. And when it comes down to rap, I realized that it might be useful to have a sort of brief historical overview, right? How it came into being. So there is this distinction first between Tibetan and Tibetophone rap. I don't speak Chinese, unfortunately. Shame on me. But so I can only work with Tibetophone rap lyrics. But Tibetan rap is, especially in Tibet itself, quite often infused with Chinese bars, Chinese lyrics. The same goes in India, of course. There's a lot of lyrics written by Tibetan rappers, which are in Hindi, and naturally then the same goes for English as well. What we see quite early in the 90s, that the first Tibetan songs featured only rap elements because it was perceived as something the pop music artists try to experiment with, I would say. And they came across the first encounters were usually through either American hip hop being played quite loudly in karaoke bars all across the big cities in China, or there was this interesting thing. There was a black market with DACO, which were basically unsold discs and cassettes that were sent back to China for recycling, but instead of being recycled, they were sold again. And these often featured actually some of the American hip hop music. So that's how it sort of spread around. Then in 2000, in this period, I would say it was more of a do-it-yourself, quite underground scene, and the culture, and it was mainly located either in Tibet or in US, of course. But then, about 10 years after, there was the emergence among the Indian-born generation in exile as well. We can see, for example, the most famous Chapalet in 2011. It was the year when he first released his first song. And also in exile, we have the Tibetan Music Awards, which go on from 2003. But in 2011, they actually introduced a distinct category for Tibetan rap. Then in 2018, coming back to China now, there was a big ban of all hip-hop culture from Chinese state media. It was done by the state administration of press, publication, radio, film, and television. They have this institution there, which released a statement proscribing any, not only hip-hop culture, but also tattooed artists and representatives of non-mainstream subcultures from appearing in all sort of public media. They wanted to basically cancel all the demotivational, disparate cultures, I would say. But still, you know, as it is with a lot of Chinese bans, it rarely is implemented, really. So now we have a quite vibrant scene, I would say, with more than 150 active artists, which those are just the artists I am aware of, right? And I'm trying my best to go around internet and, you know, basically hunting for different names. But so right now I have in my database about 160, I think, artists which made their own official releases. So when we speak about authenticity, what I mean by that in the context of Tibetan rap is basically how to keep it real. It's all about locating the authenticity and staying relevant for the audience. We see three, I would say, main layers of the authenticity when it comes to it. It's having a good flow, representing authentically the hood, and therefore gaining some respect and also giving back to the community. So now let's focus on each of those elements. First, it would be the flow, right? So that was sort of my presentation back in 2022 at the IATS conference in Prague, when I was mostly dealing with this early phase of my research. I focused on the verse structure, the rhythm, and the rhyme. Since then, I became really interested also in the homophonies, the different kinds of pronunciation they are using in order to fit the syllables to the beat. And what I find really funny about the flow is the code switching. You can have one single song, one lyrics, and they will feature colloquial and literal words and phrases, and then they will pronounce few words taken from one dialect, and then others from other, then introduce loan words, then switch to Chinese or English or Hindi. So it's a crazy mix of really great playground, I would say, for any interested linguists. They even invent new vocabulary, something like a tiga, or my favorite yinta, the word for swag, right? And basically, why I was interested in the language first, why I'm so interested in the lyrics itself, was was my focus on the formulas. Formula is something which is usually unique either to one artist or a scene, right? So it's a compositional element which sort of appears regularly under the same metrical conditions to express given essential idea. So as an example, in English, I would say instead of money, I can say cheese, you know, or something like this. So they can have different, of course, elements. It can be either not only just the word itself, but maybe also a way how the rapper puts down the words into the bars. So therefore, they can be really individual. So we can identify individual artists, or quite traditional when they use references from the religious text or folk songs, etc. When it comes down to the second element, representing, right? That's what really is, I think, the entire hip-hop scene all about. Therefore, the cornerstone of representing is something called, in the hip-hop jargon, the hood. It's a place, an anchor of one's identity. And as I said already, it's not only just the physical place, the space, but also its social fabric, its hierarchies, its relationships, the community, the family. And that's how I became interested in the spatial theory in general. So basically, production of space. Sometimes the literature calls it like hip-hop cartography. Again, I will give an example, hopefully funny enough, that we have terms such as Golokfornia or Lhatlanta instead of Lhasa, as in sort of opposing west side, east side sort of distinction, right? And when you listen to the music and carefully listen to the text, it creates a distinct soundscape. Maybe you can relate to that when I say there is a electronic music with distinct Bristol sound coming from UK Bristol. So that's sort of, and immediately you have some ideas about how it sounds. That's the soundscape. It's an audible presence of the hood in the oral textures, but also in the lyrics. It's basically the local soundtrack, and it's supposed to remind us of a particular place, right? And the third most important element is respect. That's what you gain when you do your work sustainably for a long time. You are good at it. And it's all based on how basically relatable your message is to the members of your local community. Important thing to realize when I say local community, in today's sort of world full of internet, and especially when we are talking about things like diaspora, it means that local, it's not about just geographical proximity, but about the entire affinity. So you can have even entirely digital spaces or places in this context where the community sort of gathers around performance, etc. And if they find your performance relatable, you will get their respect. And I would say in opposition to a lot of, I'm not saying all, but a lot of sort of this mainstream Tibetan pop music, it offers us a lot of subjective perspective, the social criticism, but especially the sort of everyday experience, the moral values. And an important thing is, or a factor for this gaining of respect, is a knowledge of cultural references. And as we will see, hopefully, their reinterpretation. What we cannot forget about is the commercial aspects of hip hop, right? Because hip hop is not just about the rap itself, the vocal performance. It's an entire market on its own, and it creates tons of job opportunities. So there is an entire ecosystem around it, not only the recording studios and the labels, but you have the entire pipeline. You have to have the entire pipeline figure out up to like merchandise, event companies and promoters, which then invites or calls for some sponsors, as is something you often see at the end, the credentials of the videos. There's always a kudos to some sponsors. And therefore, it again brings together the community. And I gave this example because as part on the picture, because as part of the merchandise, one such label, Money Records, from Delhi, they sell their own brand of chili oil. It's called Money Spice, right? And it's being promoted using the slogan "Nakesa," I'm spicy AF, which I will remind you of later on during the presentation, but just to keep that in mind. So if you are interested, I'm not doing any promotions, but I was told it's quite a good chili oil. Right. Now let's listen to some music. Hopefully this will work, and you should, I will give you some samples, not speak much. I now have 4 different samples I would like you to listen to, like 30 seconds or something, and then we will move on, and then we'll take a look at the lyrics themselves. All right, that was the first one. Now we have another one, also from India. Right. Then the third one, it's actually interesting because I will skip around. There are 3 distinct styles of rap in one single song. So I think it's and the last case study would be from Amdo, actually, from Golok. All right. So not to spend too much time on it, but I will give you all the other references also at the end. Now I would like to dive into the lyrics a little bit. So I provided the Tibetan text on the screen. I will try to, because I try to translate them. So I will just read out the translation now. Rabjeling, my birthplace, the place of my death, that's Hunter Rabjeling, being the god of words, being the rat's foe, through hard work I turn from sheep to goat. And I highlighted a couple of things in the lyrics because the word ra actually, of course, it in Tibetan means goat, but it's also a reference here to the old name for Lhasa, Rasa. But it has many more layers we can go into because goat is also an acronym, right? The greatest of all time. And it comes, this, now we are getting into the cross-cultural references because it's in the first place, a reference of LL Cool J's 2000 album, Goat, but that in itself was a reference of a much earlier figures of Errol Manningold, who was, by the way, a street ball player, and his nickname was Goat. And Muhammad Ali even, whose wife established a Goat Inc. Incorporated in 1992 as a company to manage her husband's intellectual property, actually. Goat is also an antonym of sheep. And in this, in the sense of these lyrics, it puts a contrast between the nomadic freedom of adulthood and sort of the herded flock of children as a feeling of some which is supposed to sort of showcase the freedom feeling which it gives to the rappers when they are together and they can rap freely about anything. Also, goats are the members of the local hip-hop community, the so-called like insiders. And in this layer of meaning, it's supposed to say that it's the true best of yourself. It's supposed to show each of the unique individuals of those community who are sort of in this sense dubbed goats. And when I was searching for the different things, then I also stumbled upon a Pahari Goat, which is an event company organizing Tibetan rap concerts, among other things, in Himachal Pradesh. So by sort of going through this, I wanted to give you a sort of overview about how a simple one letter actually can have so many different layers of meaning in the lyrics. Next, I would focus on the song Deka by Namgyal Nangmi, which actually features this being, the Deka, right? Again, I will read just the translation now. Slender on the net, no compassion you show. When it's me, from suffering, your profits only grow. Not a liar like you, demon talk I disavow. playing with minds, all the lies you throw, wow. Internet is a weapon they hone. The example is set, only caution we know, peace to be overthrown, disturbed by seed of discord you've sown. I'm just notice I'm trying to do a sort of loose translation of the lyrics so they can fit in the beat and maybe actually also rhyme a little bit, which I'm not good at, but still I'm not going after the literal meaning. Still, I would like to pinpoint the deka word, right? It's a term used for old clown-like demon with a white mask who is often present during the Losar celebrations, and his role is to chant satirical yarns and jokes to keep away other evil spirits. But in the context, that's sort of the traditional meaning, the traditional layer of interpretation. But in the meaning of in the context of this track, it also becomes a term for the internet trolls, sort of fake conmen with anonymous online personas who actually present a moral danger to the community. And as we see in the lyrics, or understood from the lyrics, mostly due to the lack of education and jealousy they show towards other, let's say, more successful or better educated people. And in the lyrics, they are sort of being equated with those who dilute milk with water, or those who are pretending to have sort of blocked hands, right? Very sort of, I would say, reaching out to the traditional corpus of Tibetan, and then also what you see often in the lyrics themselves is the use of very sort of traditional Tibetan onomatopoeia, right? And the fee here is the sound of the spreading lies, which I find absolutely amusing. And these sort of onomatopoeia often are used to fill in the gaps in the flow, in the rhythm, to fit the lyrics into the beat properly. Next, the inspired bard, as I called it, right? Because again, I will start with the translation. Heart's voice thus echoes through, mind into words, just a nice flow. As a deity I often show, send hastily, and your head will know. Like Buddha in songs, my divinity glows, sharp lyrics against my foes they row. While deep in music, my wisdom grows, my mother above all divine I bow. So we have this phrase, Yigenang Bak, descended into sound or words, right? And again, here we see that the same term is used for a visionary technique used by bards, and it's often implied in other research on rap that the techniques the bards use and the contemporary rappers use, especially when it comes down to the formulas, is actually quite similar, right? And then I also highlighted the Hailha, the God of Gods, which is in this context the reference to his mother. So as you see, we have so many different bits and pieces thrown around. We have anything from Gesar epic up to here through the reference of bards, up to very common things, and also reinterpretation of some really often used words into very different context. Now the animals. Again, quick translation from me. Descending to the plains, poised to soar up high, in water's embrace, as fish we swim, you and I. From the heavens I dive, a vulture in the flight. Arriving home, words falter, the place is just right. Here, when we see the nya, the term nya, for the fish, it's actually supposed to sort of imply the harmony within the community, right? Well, I will get to it, but the chagö, the vulture, it's in contrast with this harmony. It's the wilderness outside of that community, outside of my hood, outside of my place. And when you read it in the longer sample, you will recognize the horizontal understanding of space, which is again shows us the very sort of old school traditional way of thinking, perceiving the space in itself. But we have more, actually, because a little bit further down in the lyrics, the same artist uses very interesting phrases again. First, he used the nya again, but in this sense, it's a nya as like a good catch, a nice girl. Funnily enough, we have the same in my mother tongue. In Czech language, we say štika for in this states, which is again a type of a fish. Or we have naptu de look clock with snot, very again like how we would say maybe to a useless person, right? And here is nakesonga, which was also on the previous slide. I swear, and I forgot to actually, translate the lyrics. So here it is. Hooked on the cash, everyone's ensnared, leaders with their bellies bared. My verses venomous, heart impaired, life in the mire, unprepared, discarded, your anger flared with my affair in true declared. My body's here, still grounded, there, up high, my mind is safe and spared, right? So basically, again, greed is everywhere, with leaders being in the prime example. And the specific expression here, the Gyabun, the leader of 100 people, right? It's the head of the Tibetan settlement in exile. And the rapper here argues that his righteous lyrics are effectively a poison to people like them. And then he turns to you, the listener, but actually he refers to the fake people, the fake conmen, his enemies, labeling them as useless, the naptuluk, right? And for Tibetans, as I said, not being able to handle your own mucus means something being really, really, truly useless. And I was thinking, or when we see the phrases used like this, the formulas such as the nakesa, we call it usually an adlib, right? Similarly to the onomatopoeia, to fill in the gaps across the lyrics, to fill in the beats, the rhythm. And I also have one bonus round from the track City Tibetan. So here it's more of a scattered the lyrics because I wanted to show different things. But briefly, the first line goes, in the east of the world where the Himalayas soar, rule the kings of Tibet in the legends of lore. Then we have at a different part, oh, we lost souls, red-faced Tibetans. And then an interesting two-line piece. If I get close to a pot, will I get tainted? If I get close to a stupa, will I become white again? And sort of, again, here we see first, because it's an opening line, the first line is an opening line of the song, a very sort of traditional opening, setting the scene, locating the narrative, which will happen later on. And immediately after, the reference to the 6 mortal kings of the Le clan and the first 8 kings, the earthborn kings, of course. So reaching out back to the mythological roots. couple lines down, we see the Ladjam, right? The reference to soul-trieving rituals, and in this sense, even reaching to the pre-Buddhist notions. And then I was quite discombobulated by the two-line thing here, and it took me some time to find the correct reference, but at the end I actually found out that there is a Chinese saying which goes, one who stays near vermilion gets stained red, and one who stays near ink gets stained black. But interestingly, they adapted this into Tibetan version, and instead of vermilion and ink, they used a pot and stupa. So we again see the contrast of black and white, and the composition of the or of the benefit of being a religious person, right? So coming to an end, how do they keep it real, right? What we see is that, yes, there are references in the lyrics towards the nation and sort of pan-Tibetan national discourse and big politics identity, but most of the concern goes towards the everyday life, towards the hood and the locale, the place of the artists. And what it reminded me of is sort of this atomized quality of old Tibetan original clan-based society, which now only extends to the nodes of the diaspora, towards which we see that the sense of belonging is now shaping, especially among those who are born in those nodes outside of Tibet. We see also that these lyrics are a testimony to the liminality of this exile experience, when finally people are becoming or falling into a sedentary mode of everydayness and starting to have a relationship to their immediate locale. And that the hood or the place, the concept itself, can be broadened and include also the digital realm. In terms of the message, we see that they are trying to mostly put out some very urgent themes, such as moral obligations. They are trying to be very honest about their experience and protective about their community and place. A lot of value in the lyrics is often goes towards hard work, praising the education, and individual responsibility. So in this sense, what you can do for your state, not what the state can do for you, sort of thing. Also, just mundane imagery, which is supposed to sparkle the idea of being at home, at peace with your community. And the toolbox of cultural references, often reinterpreted. Same goes for the religious references, as we saw, for example, with the demon-like beings, right? And last but not least, the gained respect or success of individual artists instead pays back to the community through spinning off its own market, organizing events, and ultimately, therefore, bringing the community back together through these on-site gatherings. So that's all, folks. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I prepared a small surprise. If you scan the QR code, it will give you a playlist with more than 350 songs for you to enjoy the weekend with, right? So have fun, and thank you very much. I can put it back there, but now I would still like to end with a serious note. So here is a snapshot of the most influential works which went through my head when I was preparing this presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.